Hi, my name is Vint Blackburn. I am a doctor at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center as well as Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic. And as doctors, we get a lot of questions about the current COVID-19 vaccines. And I thought it was time for us to take a serious look at exactly how vaccines work, how viruses work a little bit, and be able to answer some of the questions like, can you get the virus from the vaccine? By the way, the answer is no. That's also true of the flu vaccine. We'll talk a little bit about that. Unfortunately, there is a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of it's pretty bogus. So, like I said, seemed like a good time to take a nice serious look at viruses and vaccines. First thing we need to do is actually talk about what a virus is. So for our purpose, General Grievous is going to be our virus. I thought I'd use Legos and Star Wars because, who doesn't like Legos and Star Wars? So first of all, we have to talk about what's different about a virus and a bacteria. Everybody wants antibiotics. Everybody thinks, well, gee, can't I just take an antibiotic for the flu to make it better? And of course, the answer is no, you can't. Viruses are not alive. The word bio, if you think about it, antibiotic, is actually anti-life. It actually works only on living things, such as, bacteria. But it doesn't work on viruses. What makes viruses not alive? Well, first of all, viruses don't have what they need to make more of themselves. That's one of the characteristics of life, is that it can reproduce on its own. And viruses have a lot of really interesting little things about them, but they can't make more of themselves. They need a host cell to do that. So for this purpose and this discussion, I will play the host cell. Once again, General Grievous will play the virus. So, what does a virus have? Well, a virus has to have some important things. One is a way to hook onto the cell. If it can't hook onto the cell, it can't do its work. Its work is to try and get more of itself made. So one of the things it has to have is a way of connecting onto a host cell. Second, it has to have a way of entering the cell. This guy has all the mechanisms for that, cutting its way right into the cell, being able to go inside the cell. Now, why is it important for the virus to go inside a cell? Because also, very important, is a virus contains the code or the instructions for making more of itself. That's the key. It has all of the information, usually in the form of RNA or DNA, depending on the virus, that can make more of itself. So, what happens? It comes in, attaches to a cell, goes in, cuts its way into the cell, sticks its little instruction set into the cell, saying how to make itself, all the instructions. All right, now, I'm a cell. What have I been doing all day long? Oh, I don't know. I have, in my DNA, all the instructions to make this guy. What is this guy? Let's call him serotonin. I'm a psychiatrist, so it makes sense that a psychiatrist cell would make serotonin. Makes us all a little happy, right? It doesn't look very happy, but that's okay. Anyways, I've been spending all day following my instruction set right here, happily making this guy. And he goes out and does his job of making us happy. But all of a sudden, a new set of instructions has been provided to me. I'm confused. And if I'm confused enough, I use my own machinery, the very same thing that I was using to put this guy together, some ribosomes and all of those good things that are used for building my own proteins, and I start building this. Now, what does that mean? It means I'm building more of these guys. And the problem is, I'll probably keep building more of these guys until I am absolutely stuffed to the brim with these guys. And then we all know what happens after that. At which time, it would be nice if in the ensuing explosion of the Death Star, these guys would be destroyed too. But that's just not what happens. They go out into their own free space of my body, taking their instructions, which is also a part of them, and going to find other cells to latch onto. Now, that's virus basics. It's a little more complicated than that, not much. But what we have to think about now is, what can the body do about it? So anytime anything invades the body, you have a natural set of cells that patrol and look for things that they don't recognize. Some of those are white blood cells and other forms of cells, and they go along and they patrol and they ask for identification. And if they see somebody, they may say, "Who are you?" And he might say, "I'm not the virus you're looking for." And he might say, "Okay." And of course, in this case, it might be true, because this might very well be my own body protein minding its own business. But what happens when it comes across a virus for the first time? Well, a lot of times viruses will kind of go unnoticed, and they'll take hold by getting into cells and starting their job. But sooner or later, this virus is going to meet a cell that breaks up its pieces and parts as part of its normal job, and it will take these pieces and parts and it will display them on its surface, like this, in little specialized proteins that sit on the surface of all cells. And along will come a special cell. Look at that and say, "Oh, something's not right about this. This cell is producing bits of stuff I don't recognize. That can't be good." And with any luck, it will give the instructions for something we call apoptosis. Now, when that cell's destroyed, it can no longer make more of the viruses. So that's good. We've eliminated one viral factory at this point. The problem is, now we may have thousands or millions of other cells producing these viruses. But now that this guy has actually seen the bits and pieces of that virus that has been broken up in the normal processes that cells do and displayed on the cell surface, now it can create antibodies. Antibodies are specifically designed to look for a particular piece of material, an antigen is what it's called, that has a representative part of that unwanted material. And it's able to find those pieces, literally stick to them, and the other cells come along and kill them. Of course, in this case, this is not alive. So now that we have antibodies who are trained to look for the pieces of the virus, they recognize them much quicker. So when the virus says, "I am not the virus you're looking for," then the antibody says, "Your Jedi mind tricks won't work on me, virus." And they fight, and that's the end of the virus. The idea being that they will be destroyed on sight now, because the body has been programmed to look for pieces of that virus immediately, recognizing them immediately, sounding the alarm. Now, something else I should kind of mention is, in the process of all of this, your body does a lot of natural things. One is create a fever, right? Raises the temperature of the body, makes our proteins a little more active, a little more aggressive, capable of being more destructive, it actually makes for a less environmentally friendly area for the actual virus or bacteria. So one of the things a fever does is kind of help us fight our own illness. Also, aches, pains as things go on. This is our body's natural defense system creating things that are toxic to the virus or the bacteria, but are also can make us a little uncomfortable as well. So fighting any kind of illness, it's normal as we establish the immune response, as these guys get produced and march out, to have some symptoms. So when you get a vaccination, you're actually mounting a defense response, and that's what the body feels. Now the question is, how do we get the body to recognize this without risking getting sick? Okay? And that's where vaccines come in. And there's 3 basic types. There used to be kind of 2 basic types, but now there's a 3rd with the COVID-19 vaccine. So that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, so what are vaccines and how do they work? So the earliest vaccine was kind of discovered by chance, and it was to fight smallpox. And what actually happened was there was something called cowpox, which was a lot less dangerous to people than smallpox, which actually killed millions and millions of people over the millennia. But milkmaids who would work with cows would often get infected with this cowpox virus, get a few bumps here and there, go away, and then they'd never get smallpox. And what it turned out was they were similar enough that if the body saw the cowpox, it created all of those antibodies, like this guy, that would also recognize the smallpox virus. So the smallpox virus would get killed before it would actually be able to take hold in the body, as long as people had seen the smallpox virus first, the body. So this got people thinking, especially about polio, and they thought, all right, if we could have a polio virus, but we could weaken it, maybe take away all of its weapons, send it into the body, have it go in, get broken up so that its pieces got displayed. It couldn't make us sick because it was missing a lot of the weapons necessary, but it had enough of the body parts to train the body to be able to fight it. Well, that was the early polio vaccine, was a weakened virus vaccine. And the one downside is it actually turned out that it was still a living, well, we know viruses aren't alive, but a still viable virus. And so some people did get mildly sick, and it actually transmitted it because you got a mild case of the virus, just not strong enough to kill you. So the next thing that came out and was a vaccines that are like the flu vaccines, where they actually take pieces of the virus that's circulating, enough that your body has enough of the virus to learn it. But you can't get sick from these 2 legs. You can still train your antibodies to recognize them on sight, and in the time that it takes for them to train them, these guys are floating around in the system doing no specific harm because they don't have all the pieces they need to make you sick. And the antibodies get strong so that when the real virus does show up, it recognizes it immediately and kills it before it gets into cells and causes the harm. So those are the 2 basic vaccines, and the flu vaccine is of the latter kind, and most vaccines actually are now bits and pieces, the antigens, the parts of the virus that the body can then learn to recognize and mount a defense. Once again, in the process of mounting that defense, you can get a fever. You can get all the mild symptoms that you would get from the actual illness, but they never go on to become life-threatening, serious illness, because they can't take hold. Once again, it's the body mounting up a defense from the pieces that it sees. Now, the COVID-19 vaccine is the first mRNA virus that's been approved. RNA is the creation of DNA. DNA are the strands of data that tell everything how tells your body and your cells how everything is made. RNA is made from the DNA. It's kind of like the DNA is the template. The RNA copies the template into a little copy of itself that it can then take outside of the nucleus, go to these machines called ribosomes and say, hey, let's make some proteins based on this little set of plans. So essentially, it's a way of extracting information from DNA in the cell, in the nucleus, sending it out to the machines outside of the nucleus in the cell, letting them use that plan, build the proteins they need, and off they go. Well, and as I told you earlier, viruses just replace a lot of those instructions by usually sticking in its own RNA or DNA that will get turned into RNA, and then your cell thinks it needs to make and makes them and spits them out. An mRNA vaccine does not contain any of the virus. There is not any COVID-19 in the COVID-19 vaccine. What there is the instruction set, and only for part of the vaccine. And this is where you may have heard about the spike protein, that is a part of the protein surface of a part of the surface of the virus itself. And this is what the instructions are designed to make. So what we're actually doing with the COVID-19 vaccine is sending in a small snippet of instructions, much like a virus would do itself, into your body. When those instructions make their way into your cells, the cells produce this. By itself, it's harmless, but it's still an exact duplicate of what the virus has all over its own surface. So now we say to Luke Skywalker, Luke is missing a hand. Oh, wait a minute. That would be pretty accurate, actually. Okay. So we'll just take the blaster here. So now Luke, after The Empire Strikes Back, is able to go along when he trains on this piece. Ah, I see that piece. I recognize that piece. I train on it. Now I can defeat it quickly. And he is now prepared to recognize that piece on anything that comes into the body, including the complete virus. So at this point, now we've created the same situation where the body knows how to recognize the virus, or at least a piece of it that's very common to the virus, and eliminate it quickly before it can take hold and before it can infect the cells, create more of itself, and create the illness that we know is so deadly, COVID-19. Now, the main thing that I kind of want to get across, and I hope this has been clear, is this cannot make you sick. In the process of training the body to recognize this and fight it, you can get a fever, you can get chills, you can get aches, you can get pains. They can last a day or two. They can make you feel like mild garbage, but they won't kill you. They will not get into your lungs. They will not cause the pneumonia. They will not replicate or duplicate themselves in your cells. So that's the way the COVID-19 vaccine works. We can talk about other things as well in the future, safety and all of those aspects. But right now, that should give you a sense of how vaccines work, why they're safe, and go get yours. I've had mine. I'm quite happy to have had mine. And believe me, I'm looking forward to when everybody has theirs and we can get back to normal, whatever that is. And go see Star Wars in the theater where it was meant to be seen.